Okay.
If I had to describe Sidebar to a colleague, I'll tell them that this is a radically inclusive, peer-driven network of great perspectives.
There's a lot of strategy behind how this works.
It's like your own personal board of directors.
The expertise that I'm able to sort of tap into is second to none.
You have things that you bring to the table that other people need, and they have things that they can give you perspectives on.
Even on my busiest days, I will drop what I'm doing to join Sidebar because I know it's going to be a great group of people, great facilitation, and we're all going to walk away as better leaders.
There are facilitators that manages everybody's time, but at the same time, extremely inclusive in terms of the perspectives that need to be brought into the table.
One of the best things about Sidebar is just knowing like the problems that I have are not unique to me. Having that sanity check and that peace of mind is really helpful.
There was no outlet for that specific type of vulnerability as it pertains to my professional growth that I'd had ever before Sidebar.
I give Sidebar a lot of credit to this. What I've learned since is that engagement is part of the secret sauce.
Great people, great structure, great process.
I can tell you that it was the best investment of my time, and I look forward to.
I always come out of it feeling great.
Okay, such a great video. Good job to Lexi and the team. So hi, everyone. For those of you who, some of you may know me. Hi, Corey, and I think I saw Jessica. Nice to see everyone this morning. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Ha Nguyen, and I was previously a partner at Spiro Ventures. In fact, I started the firm with Shapriya. And then a few years into it, I realized that I missed building. So while I liked the investment part of it, really, being a long time product leader and builder, like I missed building. So I went back into the operating world, back into startup life. And earlier last year, I decided that instead of just joining one company, I would support a few different founders and helping them build awesome companies, but founders whose missions I believe in, whose products I resonate with, who are amazing human beings. And exactly a year ago, I met Lexi Franklin, who is on this call. So say hi, Lexi. So Lexi's the founder and CEO of Sidebar. And as he was telling me what he was building, this concept of getting like-minded peers, founders, and senior leaders together to build a personal board of directors, like that resonated with me so much. And I had shared with him how I felt like my personal board of directors was so instrumental in my career growth, and that I wanted to support his work. And so we've been working together for the last 10 months or so, and it's been amazing. In that time, I've sent over 200 execs from my network who have signed up for Sidebar. Meghna also signed up for Sidebar, and she's Spiro Portfolio. She's the CEO of MetaMap, and she's going to be in the panel with us. It is such an incredible product and platform, and I'm so excited for you to learn a little bit more. Before I introduce our panelists, I wanted to have Lexi kick off and share a little bit about what Sidebar is, why he started Sidebar, his mission and vision for the company, and then I'll introduce our panelists.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ha. It's unbelievable to have you here, and I'm so excited to meet all of you. Like, I mean, hopefully the bar for this is high. Hopefully this is the highlight of your days. I hope it's really high energy and wonderful. My name's Lexi. I'm the CEO and founder of Sidebar. Our vision was really powerful and simple, right? We spend 90,000 hours of our lives working. It's like the vast majority of time we spend awake on the planet. And for all of us, we're all growing really fast. We're learning. We want to build things and have them have huge impacts in the world. And wow, there's like about 90% of things we know on a day-to-day basis how to do, and 10% of things that are just net new. Like every day I'm just like, ooh, that's a new one. Like, I'm not quite sure exactly how to do that. And instead of kind of like learning on my own and treating it as first principle and just trying to figure it out, there's peers that we can surround ourselves with who have been there and done that before, who have that like hard-earned tuition paid work experience, and who maybe for them, they're like, I already spent a bunch of time on this. Like, I have a concept about how to think about it, about what to do, about kind of that next step. And so, our mission is to make everyone more successful in their careers. And our vision is to unlock everyone's full potential. And I think that what we felt at Sidebar was that there was this tremendous opportunity to build a leadership program that's really focused on accelerating your career. And I think our big insight, like our truth hiding in plain sight, was the best way to learn and accelerate your career was to utilize your peers. That peers were this huge untapped resource. If I have a question about how to run the company, I just want to talk to Sam. Sam probably knows it, sort of thing. And I want to learn from him and grow and be able to talk about this stuff in this really authentic, safe space. And really get better consistently by learning from others. And so previously to this, I worked at Meta, or it was called Facebook at the time. And yeah, it was awesome. Such like brilliant people. It was an incredible spot. And people would do this incredible work. And I'd be like, wait, I want to learn that. Like, how do I figure that out? What is that like? What does that feel like? And it just like, it was hard to be like, okay, well, yeah, like how do I learn that tool in my toolbox? Like everyone's just moving so quickly and it makes a ton of sense, right? Everyone's very good. We're moving really fast, but there just felt like, wait, there's this opportunity to really like learn from each other. And so when I go and try and tackle the next problem, I'm not starting from scratch. I'm able to draft off all the learnings and insight of everyone who's come before me and be like, oh yeah, I'm not even in the right mountain range. Like this is not how I would tackle this. Like someone else spent a bunch of other time, they would tackle it this way. Or actually, I'm doing really well. Like I can have the confidence to get to talk about it in my small group and then go lead the company or go lead the next project or go innovate in this way that it has a huge impact on the world. And so that was the vision of Sidebar. I think what's really interesting and powerful about it is like, we're product people at the end of the day. We just want to build an experience where every day you come in and it feels amazing, right? Like I think that we were able to create a system relatively quickly where the time value exchange was there, where you're just able to learn from people so effectively. But like, that's not the bar, right? The bar is that you come into this and it's the highlight of your month, right? You come in and you're like, wait, I can't imagine my life without getting to jam with these people. Like this is incredibly valuable and incredibly powerful. Like, and that's what we've just been iterating on and working on and trying to really like get to the center of, sort of thing. Sidebar has been growing really fast. We have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who are in it. But at the core is like the first group needs to feel as good as the 50th, right? It needs to feel consistent. It needs to feel like, wait, these are my people. And it needs to feel like on a day-to-day basis, you have these people who believe in you no matter what. And I think that that was like kind of the core question is, for me, I'm super lucky. I've always had a lot of people who are like, even when you mess up, like just keep going forward, you'll figure it out, sort of thing. But like that belief of having people who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself, was this incredible superpower. And I think the founding question on Sidebar would be like, well, what if everyone had 8 to 10 people who believed in them, even when we kind of didn't kind of see the end of the tunnel, like the light at the end of the tunnel, even when we didn't actually like know exactly how to do what we were doing. And so that was really the core idea that we built all these groups around. For me personally, my personal why in the world is I want to make a positive difference in 1 billion people's lives in my lifetime. That I just want to be part of a team that does it. That may happen in 50 years. It may happen in 3 years. Hopefully it happens sooner as opposed to later, but I just want to be part of a team that's working on that. So that's a little bit about my personal why. I'm so excited that there are Sidebar members here and we can talk through with all of you. I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope this panel is super energizing. Working with Ha has been one of the deep, deep, deep gifts of my entire career. Ha is absolutely brilliant at what she does. And I think that, again, as a product person and a first-time founder, trying to figure this all out, want to be the best I can. I'm like, okay at this right now, but in 3 years, I just want to be amazing. And Sidebar's been pretty instrumental at making that happen. And so, yeah, I really care about the Sidebar interactions I've had. It's been a really life-changing experience. And we're just like really honored to be with you all and share this with all of you. And hopefully it's just an incredible accelerant and super impactful.
Thank you, Lexi. So I'm going to be putting you on the panel as well, because not only did you start Sidebar, but in the first year as you were building the plane while flying it and figuring this out, I know you were part of a Sidebar founder. Also, you can share a little bit about your experience. I am going to introduce our other 2 panelists, and I'm just going to briefly share who they are, and they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves and why they decided to join Sidebar. So we're going to go with Meghna. So Meghna, as I mentioned, is the COO of MetaMap, also Spiro Portfolio. She found out about Sidebar on her own and decided to join. So Meghna, share a little bit about your story there.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just for context on MetaMap and what we're building, we're trying to solve the problem of access to critical services in emerging markets. Most people in the world don't have things like traditional credit scores and data that can actually be used to help them access, better financing, better jobs, opportunities, and things like that. And so we're building this kind of ubiquitous layer of user data, and it's very, very privacy centric. So, the users kind of control that information and what they can do with it. And that allows builders who are offering them services to find them more easily and work with them in a more beneficial way. So that's just a little bit of context about what we're doing. How I found out about Sidebar is this is actually like a product I think I would build myself if I wasn't building MetaMap. I think I've just always been a very strong believer in learning being most effective when it's peer-to-peer or community-driven. I myself have been part of lots of different founder and operator networks and communities, built a couple myself, and always, with the intention of both benefiting other people, but selfishly like trying to learn as much as possible from just excellent people. And I always felt like it wasn't really being done super well, like in the other networks and communities I was part of, where there was this kind of like peer-to-peer exchange. Like there always seemed like something was a little bit off with the experience, with the product, with the thought process put behind how this is structured. And I think coming across Sidebar was like this aha moment for me, because it was so clear that, the folks at Sidebar had kind of thought about this problem 100 times more than any of the other networks that had kind of been part of. And it showed up in all kinds of details, right? Like the fact that the community doesn't exist on Slack, but it's their own kind of platform. Notifications have to be on. Everyone is like really, really committed and accountable to showing up in a meeting. Like if you don't show up, you're basically out. Like it doesn't matter if you had a board meeting or the sky was falling, there's this kind of like accountability. So it's all kinds of details like that I feel like made their principles very clear up front, and made it very compelling for me even before I experienced it, to sort of say, this is something that I want to kind of, take a bet on and spend my time on. And so far the experience has been incredible. I'm sure we'll talk about details a little bit more, but that's essentially how I came across it.
Thank you so much, Meghna. And I'm going to plus one to what you said. I think the reason why I was so passionate about partnering with Lexi was like, I probably would have built this too, because I've considered myself a community builder, and I do lots of big events and small events. And I'm like, but what about the continuity of those conversations? Like, and how do we sustain it beyond events? So I probably would have built Sidebar in a past life if it was a little bit more entrepreneurial like Lexi. So thank you for sharing. And then our third panelist is Sam Rosen, who's the founder and CEO of DeskPass. And I asked Sam to be on this panel because he was an OG member of Sidebar. So I think within the first year of Sidebar getting started, Sam, you'd signed up right away. So please share a little bit about yourself and your story of why you decided to join Sidebar.
Meet you. I'm Sam. I live in Chicago. I run DeskPass, which is just a platform that connects individuals and companies with this growing network of co-working and flexible workspaces on demand. And before that, I started a branding agency, which is celebrating its 19th anniversary next year. So I've sort of always been entrepreneurial in my path. I met Lexi. We got introduced through an investor pretty early on and had a brilliant conversation. And I was told me what he was building, and that was really how I got introduced to the platform, which was quite a while ago now. And it was very kind of fortuitous timing for me. And my story was basically over COVID, I started therapy for the first time in my life, which was awesome. And something I was like, oh shit, I should have probably done this a long time ago. And I think, same challenges everybody had over COVID. And I spent a lot of time in therapy. And I realized after a while that all I talked about in therapy was work. I didn't talk so much about my wife and my two kids and I always kind of got hung up on my partner and entrepreneurial stuff. And I have this wonderful therapist, and she was very helpful at helping me navigate that through like my nervous system and just these patterns that I have. But I realized I kept getting blocked there. And then there were like insights, like many years into therapy. She was like, Sam, I've known you for 2 years. How did I not know like this fundamental thing about like you as, your life? And I realized it's because I always spend this time talking about work. And she is not an entrepreneur of a tech company. She's doesn't have the same types of problems that I have. So I started to dabble and look at like YPO and some of the other groups that exist. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to make that big of a commitment. I wasn't, in terms of just time and cost. But I started to kind of look, and that's when I met Lexi, and I came across Sidebar, and I thought, yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for. It's sort of the right investment in time and energy. I think it gets, in theory, it gets what I'm going after. And to me, Sidebar has in a lot of ways been like work therapy, in the best way possible, because I'm working with a set of, curated group of people that have similar companies and similar stages. I think that are similar in sort of the way they operate and their kind of outlook in the world. And I get to spend a lot of time with them where aside from just helping me feel better, I have like very pragmatic feedback and advice. And then you sort of build up that context that you would in therapy, where it's not like, to solve this problem, let's unbundle all this. But these people I've been building a rapport and a foundation with for a year. So they know what I build, they know the people involved, and it's been really wonderful. And the other thing that's been wonderful about that is I've gotten further with therapy. So because of this, I don't have to talk about my founder issues with my therapist, and we could talk about, like being a dad and trying to live a fulfilled life outside of work. So it's a 2-for-1, but it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm excited to share my journey.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sam, for sharing. And actually, I'm gonna go with the second question. I'm gonna go back to you because you've been with Sidebar now for a year and a half or so, I believe. We talked a little bit about the why Sidebar, but like, what is the experience like? Like, what exactly are the mechanics, and how's your experience been? So if you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So you're invited into a curated group. The curated group is, supposed to be around 8 to 10 people, I believe. It sort of fluctuates as people kind of find their footing and figure out if they want to commit to the group. It's a commitment of an hour and a half for every 2 weeks. It's, really like the format is a group that's curated and facilitated by someone who's wonderful. We've had a couple of folks now who facilitated, and they've all been really, really fabulous. There's a format and a structure related to the group that I'm sure, Lexi can explain better, but like, and that also has, one thing I love about Sidebar is it's evolving. Like since I've been involved in the first year and a half, when Lexi says they iterate, like they fucking iterate. Like it's amazing to see how much like the product has refined, the process has refined, the tools have refined. But it's this app, web-based experience. So you hop onto an application, it's a video chat like this, but the whole experience is really built around these conversations you're having. So kind of understanding the structure of how the hour and a half is going to go. There are these loops and processes around, so it's not always the same meeting every time. It's goal setting and then kind of riffing on those goals through a period of time, reflecting on those goals, all working together as entrepreneurs. So it's like a video chat experience, with notes and goal setting. That's like the active hour and a half experience. But the thing that also is really powerful, Sidebar, is the community. So it's this broader community that's growing. It's a bunch of, so far I found like all to be like really impressive, high performing builders of things. And so outside of just that hour and a half that you get, which ends up being like friends, the people that you get to know in real life. More than that, you have this pretty excellent community of, hey, does anyone know a writer and content writer? Or does anybody come across this problem? And opposed to tapping the 8 people in your group, you're tapping the hundreds of people in this growing network.
Lexi, is there anything else that you want to add to that Sam left off in terms of the experience itself?
No, those introductions were amazing. And Sam, you're on fire. No, I think that's the core of it, right? Is that you come in, we really care about matching. So I think that, one of the really big, I think, differentiators of Sidebar is we super believe in user research. So like, across product, there's different vibes on user research and like how the role it plays. But, in my experience, that user research is just incredibly magical. And so, one of our first hires was like a head of user research. We just talk to members all of the time. And one of the things when you kind of look at small group experiences that's really important is that they can feel amazing, or they can leave someone feeling like they're giving more than they're getting. And a huge part of that is the matching, right? And a lot of small group experiences match based off location, or they match based off, these are the first 10 people who came in, that's the next group sort of thing. And for us, there's just so many pieces that go together, right? You want to find people who are at similar scopes, their companies at similar stages, what they're dealing with and their goals are in a similar spot, but it's also diverse, right? Which is something we really believe in, like diverse across race and gender and ethnicity, and whether or not you have kids and how old the kids are and where you're living and what your hobbies are. And so you end up finding these people who are in your group who feel like, wait, these are my people. I really want to be around them. And at the same time, they have a different perspective than I do. They have a diverse set of experience. And they're able to give perspective in a way that I wouldn't get just in talking within my own head. And so that's like just another piece of it sort of thing. Is there's just like a lot of thought that goes into before you even get added to a group, to make sure that this is just as impactful for you as possible.
Thank you, Lexi. Okay, I'm going to turn to Meghna for the next question, which is, Meghna, how has your Sidebar experience helped you achieve your goals or unlock your best work?
Yeah, I think, just to build on what Lexi was saying, I've been part of, previous groups of very specific kind of executives, like COO groups, for instance. And I think the conversations there were very like tactical, operational, helpful, but I think in maybe sort of like maximizing a local minima instead of something that was a little bit more fundamental to my learning and development as a leader. And so I think before the matching process happened with Sidebar, I was kind of clear that, my role is not a very typical COO role. I think no COO role is typical, but I have different bents in my company, and I emphasize some of those. And I think I was matched to a group where the different execs and leaders are kind of similar in that they're more holistic and kind of broad in the leadership and the role they play in the company. And a big theme for us is really around, authentic leadership and a lot of the challenges that come with scaling and things that are kind of agnostic to one specific functional role, but I think, more company-wide, and that was really sort of helpful for me personally. So I think in terms of the specific value I've gotten, it's obviously from the kind of peer-to-peer advice and exchange around specific challenges I'm experiencing, or like Lexi was saying, right, like the 10% of stuff I show up with every day, every week that I haven't handled before, that maybe my immediate network doesn't really have necessarily the capacity for. I think those questions have been really helpful to bring to the group. I also feel like generally with, every investor and advisor network is a little bit different, but I think sometimes when you're in communities and networks, there's like somewhat of a guilt of like asking too much for help, right? And I think with Sidebar, like I've never felt any of that. Like I think I've bombarded sometimes people with like 10 questions a week and ask them for like a ton of time, and everyone is incredibly generous with that time because ultimately they know that you're going to pay it forward, and there's going to be some moment in which, they'll probably need your help. And I think that kind of exchange has felt very non-transactional, which I think is very helpful because, as a leader, your role is consistently changing. The challenges are very different in any given kind of week. And I think that sort of setting and foundation has been really helpful. I think aside from the members in my group and the broader network, I've learned a lot of tools and skills from the facilitators themselves, who are like truly excellent at what they do. A lot of, my role in the company is facilitating, groups of people to be effective and working with each other, even when there's a lot of diverse perspectives and decisions are not easy to make. And so I think learning kind of tips and tricks from the facilitators themselves has been really wonderful, because I think you come into a kind of session thinking, my problem is like so vast. How do I even explain it to this group of people that has no context? And then they'll challenge you to do it in 90 seconds. And you're like, whoa, how do I explain this problem in 90 seconds? But somehow you manage to get there. And in the process of, trying to make your issue more succinct and like fit into that 90 seconds, you realize like actually a lot of things can be boiled down into pretty simple frameworks and communication techniques and things that force you into, problem solving much more practically and effectively. And so I think for me, that's kind of been really helpful in terms of those tools to actually make what feel like really sticky and complex problems actually quite simple. And it's just kind of given me that container to solve them, within, which I think for me has been very helpful given the diversity of problems I work on in the company.
I think that was really well said. I think, when I talked to Lexi and I talked to our members too, I mean, I would say what stands out about Sidebar is the world-class matching, which Lexi touched upon. And then you brought up the second thing, which is world-class facilitation. I mean, the facilitators are amazing. I'm in the group myself. They're fun. They're coaches. They know how to ask the right questions. They know how to keep the conversations like moving along at a fast pace. And the 90 minutes just flies by. I mean, and I think it's just anchored around those facilitators being as amazing as they are. And they are in-house with Sidebar. So, there's a quality bar that Sidebar holds their facilitators to. What about you, Sam? I'm going to throw sort of that same question out to you in terms of like, how has Sidebar helped you unlock your best work? And any real life examples that you want to share too, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think there's like two vectors I think about. So one is last year was like a insanely hard year for me professionally, personally. I think I'm not alone here, but early stage startup in commercial real estate, raising money, trying to acquire another company, trying not to die, dealing with family stuff. Just it was super fucking intense. And there's this emotional support from this group of people that has been really powerful and really important to me, aside from the practical stuff, which is this recognition of I'm not alone, this recognition of most of the people in this group are actually dealing with the same problems, same feelings that I'm feeling. And that's really powerful to kind of, I just feel like, our group I would describe as like high EQ founders, and every group is different. But I think like for us, it's just like, it feels daunting. It feels like the world's on your shoulders. It's hard to talk to my wife about, like, it's hard to talk about the things that are going on to other people. And here I have a room of people that have not just had like space for it, but they're like, yeah, I feel that too. Or I felt them too, or this is a problem I've experienced before. To me, that's been like one of the best parts, is just like this ability to know you're not alone, to know that these are real problems that other people have. And then you get into like really practical, pragmatic stuff, which is like, I've gotten help around alternative forms of, extending our runway around. There's a guy who runs a CFO group, has all sorts of interesting insights around finance. We had to let go of a couple people, and some of our groups like, oh man, I've fired so many people. I'm so good at it. Here's like my, simple framework to do this in a way that's like as painless as you can make something that's difficult like that. So I find a lot of value in the really pragmatic stuff. And there's always someone who either has direct experience or it's once removed. But if I had to pick one, it's more of the just emotional support that's not just like one-off. It's built over getting to know people throughout the year, many times, putting in the hours where you really feel the support. So
Amazing. I'm going to open it up to questions. Even though I had a couple more questions prepared, I want to make sure that we answer any questions that the group might have about Sidebar, the Sidebar experience, how to get started, anything. Yes, Cheryl.
Hi, I have a quick question. My husband's actually in Hampton, which is kind of a similar community, probably exactly the same, I'm not sure. So I've been hearing from him and I'm like, oh, maybe I should join one too. And then you guys appeared. So amazing. I think the Hampton format he's told me, and I don't know if it's changed, is like every time, like maybe an hour, you go through a founder's problems or challenges, and then the whole group kind of jumps in and helps you. I'm just wondering if that's the same format here or how is it different? Question 2 is the Hampton network seemed to be very strong also in very local communities. I've met his group here in Austin, or maybe it's a separate Austin community where your actual group is different, but you have a different local group. And that seems pretty tight too. I've attended some dinners and things like that. So curious about that component, the local meetup component as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Lexi take that question.
Great. Yeah, maybe I'll take the first part, and then Ha's been helping us with a lot of the local meetup stuff. So maybe Ha, you can add some stuff at the end. So Cheryl, it's great to meet you. Yeah, so that kind of style of doing it that way is modeled off of YPO. So I don't know if anyone's heard of YPO before, like Young Presidents Organization, but YPO was like an early version of this kind of for CEOs. In order to do it, it's a nonprofit, but it's huge. They generate a lot of revenue. It's very popular. Sort of thing. And YPO's like clear, like bright spot is the forum. And so the way that the structure of this, or Vistage is another example. Both of these are like pretty big companies. Like YPO probably does like $450 to $500 million a year in revenue. So it's like pretty considerably large. It's like an awesome way to think about it. And I think that I like that system. I would say Sidebar is structured in a little bit differently. And so the way that one of the things that I think is really important is that there's like this idea between the group should just get together and good ideas will flow. So we actually don't believe that. Like we actually believe that the structure sets you free here. It's just like running any really good meeting, right? You need to have a really good person in the meeting running it and facilitating it, where maybe they're only talking 10% of the time, but it just feels like it's flying and it's flowing and it's making sense. And so we actually have each of the calls have a like theme and a structure that you get as soon as you join Sidebar. So you know what's coming. There's actually 3 years of programming. So you know what's coming like across the whole gamut of your time there. And there are actually specific different types of calls. So in the beginning, you get to meet everyone, you connect, you bond, you're like, great, these are my people, this is awesome, sort of thing. Very quickly, it's about establishing goals. And like we at Sidebar are really big believers in goals, but the way we think about goals is goals don't really count unless there's actions to follow up on them, right? So I could have a goal of, we have a goal right now. We're trying to hire a head of growth is one of our goals, sort of thing. But there's like 20,000 things for me to do in order to go like hire this person. And so like for me in setting up the goals in Sidebar, it's like one, there's a whole session like, are those big enough goals? Like am I aiming high enough? Like should our goal be like much bigger than that sort of thing? And then secondly, it's like, great, here are the things that you need to do in order to get it done. What are the dates you want to get it done by? Like how do we kind of hold you accountable to it? So there is this kind of structure in place with this social accountability. I think another thing that's slightly different is that there are times for people to come and share. But we have a specific way of doing it. So instead of it just being like everyone gets to do one and it's kind of like a presentation and everyone just like presents on a deep idea, there's like much more room for kind of like ad hoc, like in the last couple of weeks, like here's the 10% of thing that's been keeping me up at night. And then Sidebar has like a very clear structure about how to do that. So at first we ask a bunch of questions, right? So it's not just like, oh, I know the answer like automatically to your question. It's like, I need to understand it. The next step in our programming is we have to repeat it back to make sure like it's really heard. And then people can start to offer ideas and suggestions. And then there's a check-in of like, is this helpful? Like, are you getting what you need? Because like, if you can't take the practicality of what the group is sharing and apply it kind of the next day, it's not really having the impact that we desire. And so that's kind of the part that's the most similar, I would say, to Hampton, that center part sort of thing. And then I think there's a third part, which is like what are the things that maybe aren't as like readily perceptible to an individual that the group can help with, right? Like, how are you perceived like among the group? Like, what are the groups? How does the group see your bright spots, right? How does the group see like areas that you could potentially work on? Like things that you brought up a couple months ago that you really wanted to work on. Like, how does the group feel like you're making progress on it? So there kind of is this group as like almost like a accountability force for you go getting what you want, which is kind of unique sort of thing. And then we kind of talk about quite a bit about as you go through the program, like how do you want to show up every day? So one of the things I'm working on is a lot of things, but one thing I get consistent feedback on is like I will have like maybe 6 good ideas that I explain, and people can only really take in 3. So like how can I consistently just say like here are the top 3 things and repeat those over and over and over again. So like how I'm showing up is not necessarily how I think I'm showing up. So there's like a lot of really good work around like who we are as leaders, how we show up, how we think about that. And so I would say that it borrows from some of those kind of core structures that are out there, but it also adds on top of it. From a group perspective, we kind of think about this both like outside of your core group and in person. And so outside of your core group, we have a bunch of different this is where we're iterating pretty fast. So our first kind of year was really focused on the magic moment is you come into Sidebar and you make a better decision about whatever you need to tackle by going to group than you would on your own. So like making that small group experience with the facilitator, with the programming, with all of that like best in class has been our really core focus. Now we have quite a few members. It's growing really fast. And so there's all these incredible people to meet outside of your group. So, how do we we have groups of where people are messaging each other. We have location groups where people are like, oh, like here's where everyone in this area can get to know each other. Haas have been starting to host a bunch of events for us. So I would say, Cheryl, we're starting to build up the outside of the group more and more and more. And so while I think that in person is a focus that we're excited about and getting more into, that's like starting to come online, I would say more and more in 2024. We started at the end of 2023. Our major focus has been like just making that 90-minute group experience every other week, like as good as it possibly can be. Anything else to add? Or
yeah, I would say that well, first of all, there's some magic, and we saw it with Product Leader Summit, right? So we I host a 120 person event every year. It's VPs of product who come together for a day and a half of networking and learning. And in our last Product Leader Summit, there were about 40 Sidebar members who were part of Product Leader Summit. And there was something magical that happened where they knew each other from their Sidebar groups, right? And really built this like deep connection with each other. And then meeting in person ended up becoming so magical for them. And, and so even outside of the Product Leader Summit, they grabbed dinners and lunches and walks together. And there was some magic of you start the connection offline, and then you meet in person and there's that instant bond. And so it was lovely to see that. Of course, we've been starting sort of Sidebar-led happy hours. We did one in San Francisco. We did one in New York recently. And then I've been hosting monthly dinners. But what we're seeing more and more are that our members are starting to self-organize too. So now with over 600 members, there's now pockets, right? Like there's an Austin pocket. No, there was an Austin happy hour as well, but there's an Austin pocket. There's a New York City pocket. There's a Miami pocket. And so members are starting to sort of almost lead their own, I want to call it local chapters, if you will. And I think Lexi's right. In 2024, I think that's going to explode now that we have this critical mass of members.
Yeah, it's like a really interesting product question. This is something like just because we're all founders, like we talk about all the time, right? Sort of thing. Like, what's the atomic unit? Like, what do we double down on? How do we expand? Like coming from Facebook, I think the social stuff is probably what we feel the most comfortable with, sort of thing. But there's been a pretty interesting push to just kind of like double down on the small group, double down on the small group, double down and make it better, double down and make it better. And so like there's this pull to make it more and more social. And like it's definitely, to Ha's point, getting there. And I've at multiple meetings have been like, oh yeah, we should go do this. We should go do this. We should go do this. And there's always like that double down push of like focus on the core and make it better and better. And so it really is like you're all joining at a time where we bootstrapped completely for the first year. and then had been building product for 2 years after that. So this is kind of like we're cresting into the start of year 4 of Sidebar's existence. So we really have that core atomic unit of the small group working well, sort of thing. And we're iterating really fast. And then the social stuff is like starting to come online in a big way in 2024.
Other questions?
Can you dive into a little bit more about the member population? Like how
Yeah.
many co-founders, CEOs? I hear that a lot and I'm thinking like, well, I'm not that, but versus other senior leaders. And maybe if you could double click into the matching process and how you're thinking about that as well.
Yeah, brilliant question. So I would say Sidebar has 2 major pockets: senior leaders and founders and CEOs. So those are kind of like the 2 major groups, sort of thing. We tend to match them within each other. And so and then but there's always like the world is interesting and people are interesting, right? There are senior leaders who are leaving to start their own companies. There are founders who are like actually wanting to go fractional. So there's all these different overlaps, but we tend to, from a matching perspective, to be really focused on who are people who are having to deal with similar problems to me on a day-to-day basis. Like this is the core thing. So if you look at a lot of different ways people match, like people can match on job title sort of thing, or people can match off of years of experience, but like that's actually not what is relevant on a day-to-day basis. It's like, what are the problems that you're internalizing on a day-to-day? And I think that that's like that key, right? How do we match what are the problems you're internalizing on a day, and what are your goals? I mean, Meghna, you had that brilliant example of other COO groups, right? And it's like, so like you can match just other COOs, but then you miss kind of something else on kind of like what are the goals? What are we working on? What's like the diversity of perspective, where maybe it's tactical, which is great, but it's also a local, you said it so brilliantly, like almost like a local maxima, right? And we want to push through that. And so that's kind of how I would think about that question is like, I would say we probably, if you analyze the overarching database, it kind of goes in those 2 areas. Now, from a senior leader perspective, they're very good at their jobs. So these are people who are like growing very quickly. Because you don't want to be in a small group with people where you feel like I know the answers to all these questions. And so we're able to get people where like, whoa, like everyone's throwing like 100-mile-an-hour fastball here. This is awesome. Like I want to be in this group. I want to learn. I want to contribute. I want to grow. And so that's kind of the senior leader vibe. And from a founder vibe, it goes like across the entire grouping. Like, I mean, Hampton's a really interesting example on this too, right? Because Hampton is like focused on founders and founders who are like pretty far along on the product market fit path sort of thing. Like their stuff's really working. It's making a big difference. Like it's clicking. I think we have people who all the way from like starting companies to like they raise their round and they're trying to figure it out, to they're just experiencing product market fit, to like product market fit's working but it's shifting sort of thing, to like it's flying. And so we try and match founders within those groups, so you feel like, great, I'm like starting with other people who are kind of like working on the same things that I am. So our company looks up to Sam's company because Sam always seems like he knows what's going on, sort of thing. So I'm like, all right, I have so much I can learn from Sam. So like, that's kind of like how we kind of match and think about it. Does that answer your question?
Totally.
Awesome.
And
But
maybe
please keep asking these. This is so helpful. We just want to make sure everyone has all the context.
Yeah, I guess maybe just to add to that, I think what's helpful is also that recognizing the fact that like everyone has an identity, which is like your function or your specific job at work. And then like lots of people are on boards or like advising companies or, playing some role in a nonprofit. And a lot of times like that experience is also, it doesn't seem like it at the sort of forefront, but it ends up being really helpful for the fundamental areas of development, because any kind of people manager or leader, regardless of the function, has like very similar challenges. And a lot of those actually tend to be, quite common. And I think it's really helpful with that diversity to get perspectives that you wouldn't normally get if you were matched on more superficial attributes. So I do think, there's some folks in my group, for instance, that are like fractional in 2 or 3 companies. And so they can bring like multiple perspectives. There's some folks that actually ended up like enjoying the process so much they became facilitators at Sidebar in addition to their current job, which is helping them grow as like people managers and leaders within their org. So I do really appreciate like that it kind of tracks the future of work to some extent, and that, you know, we're not no longer going to be defined by like these very kind of singular identities. And I think that's kind of part of like the flourishing of everyone as like leaders and, you know, senior members of teams as well. So I think I really appreciated that being the distinction but in this network and group versus some of the others, which I think lets you do the work in a lot more you know, deep of a way.
That's beautifully said. Thank you, Magna. I want to make sure we take one or two more questions and then end a few minutes earlier so that we can all do our bio breaks or check emails before our next meeting. So Jessica, I know you had one question.
Yes. Well, first, I was so glad to hear that there is structure and a really great facilitator, because I have been in a group that was like very unstructured with a very kumbaya kind of facilitator. And we're like, I don't know, I didn't feel like I was like growing and progressing and things like that. So
Yeah.
very happy to hear it.
Which is what you need, right? Like we've all been in that situation where like everyone has the most brilliant friends, but like no one planned the event. So like all these brilliant people show up and you're like, wait, who's in charge here? Like, what are we doing? You're like, how many people does it take to figure out what we're doing for dinner? A lot, sort of thing. Like that's the opposite feeling that we want in the group. So I thank you so much for mentioning that.
Yeah. And so I was wondering if you could share a bit more about some of the other topics or things that have been structured out.
Oh yeah, 100%. So so we can actually send over everyone on the call. We can send everyone like a little video that we filmed that just like details the programming as well, sort of thing, and kind of give everyone, there's like a little slide about it too. But in general, I think it's like we call it like having a strong hand on the tiller, right? It's like you want to be in a place where you just can show up and grow and learn. Because what's so important is that for everyone, like no one's a number, right? We just are like, we want to get the exact, like the best people from you that for you that we know that we can learn the most from as fast as you possibly can. Like that's the goal, sort of thing. And so in order to do that, coming in and being like everyone showing up on time, to Magna's point, like we really care about attendance, right? So when you look at you know, a lot of other offerings, like maybe it's like an online offering where you watch something online, like, you know, when you look at the data of that, like maybe 2% of people within the company utilize that sort of thing. Like people show up to Sidebar not only because for them to learn, but because your group is really counting on you for your insight. Like everyone's bringing those things that we can't solve. And I think to the previous question too is like whether you're a senior leader or you're a founder, like there's all these things where like, oh, I'm doing this for the first time. Like, I don't know the answer to this question. It's keeping me up at night. Like that's what the group's there for. And so that strong hand on the tiller is really important. I think one of the big differentiators for us is that in a lot of these groups, when they add facilitators, they will add an executive coach. And executive coaches are awesome, but we tried, like we just iterated our way through it all. And what we found is really important is like, it's not the job of the facilitator to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, the less they talk, the better these groups go. Like we want to hear from Magna, we want to hear from Sam. Like it's, you don't want to hear anything from me if I'm facilitating sort of thing. But that 10% is just to make sure that I'm structuring it really well. You know, we built this is why we built our own platform. So there's actually an agenda tracker on the top of every call that's like, whose turn is it to talk? What's the schedule? What's going on? So everyone knows. So like, it's like the meetings start on time, they end on time. We hit the individual sections on time. And so when when you log into the Sidebar, you see your programming, right? So you see like what you have to do to prep. One really good example is we just went through the end of year programming. So everyone had to think through, okay, what do they want to accomplish in 2024? They had to write a letter to themselves at the end of 2024, in 2020, the end of 2023 to be like, okay, what happened this year? There was like all these things about like, well, what are your core goals? Like, how do you want to bring? How do you want to show up? What do you want to be your legacy? So people actually had to do homework, going like across the holiday to like really start with 2024. This is our first year of doing it, and everyone came in pretty much on fire, which is like, wait, that was super hard. And even for the people who were like, I didn't do it, then they like did it after, which there was some because we're all busy. They were like, wait, this is really impactful. And so what I would say is that there's like 5 different sections throughout the year that this breaks down into. And you kind of go through these different sections. You kind of go through okay, everyone comes into Sidebar usually with about 3 sessions worth of pent up questions. So the first 3 sessions are usually just emptying our cups of just like, I have a question about this. I have a question about this. I have a question about this sort of thing. Like as an example, for me, one of my pent up questions is we are hiring a lot more people. It's new for me, and I don't know how much like time authentically to dedicate to it versus all of the other things. So like it's keeping me up at night. So that's like a pent up question that Magna might already have the answer to. But I would love like someone's help sort of thing. And so like people come with pent up questions. That's like bucket one. But then you're kind of it's called calibrating. So you're like going through calibration stage. Then you go through goal stage. Then you kind of go through a growth stage where you're iterating on your goals. Then there's like a check-in and it's like, okay, but like, are you like, do you need to realign with what you want? And then you kind of dive back into the next level. Another bucket of work is there's learning. So we kind of, this was mentioned earlier, but you know, one of the things that we talk about is bottom lining. Like how can you articulate what you're trying to say in like 90 seconds or less, like really effectively. So there's all these different like learning modules and pamphlets and things that we're working on and takeaways and all these shared resources. And so there's all these different pieces. And so that's kind of what I would think is like you kind of go through the structure and we can add the video and we can add the slide so you have that context. But it's really that ethos of it's like there's a sidebar energy to it. People are really positive, they're super smart, but they're not the star. Like it's not like they're on stage and everyone's watching. It's really to elevate everyone else in the room to feel like their most powerful selves to help and learn as much as they can.
So
anything else to add, Sam?
Yeah, I might add just two quick things that I found like really to be valuable. The goal setting. It's about like short-term goals and long-term goals, and you do it as a group. And it's sort of integrated into the feed of your group, right? So it's just like very nice. Like everyone, I think, you know, most people have their own kind of goals they set, but to set these goals, some of them are more on the personal side, more the professional side. But to do that as a work, kind of work through them as a group, clarify them as a group, and then put them on the board for everybody to see, both in the short term and the long term, like to me has been like a very valuable tool. And then it's like at the end of these like working sessions, it's like Sam, who raises their hand? I need feedback. And then sort of at the end, it's often like, okay, you know, can somebody else like summarize the advice, Sam's problem or the advice given to Sam? And then it's like, hey, coming into this next meeting, how can we know if we've helped you, or how can, you know, what can you do to actually be pragmatic in the next step? And then actually in that next meeting, so when it's like 2 weeks later and you're like, oh yeah, that was seems like a problem from like a different lifetime ago. It's actually this accountability too, of just a step back of like, did this work for you? Were you successful? So I really like these feedback loops because it makes it feel less that you're like screaming into a void, and instead you're like accomplishing something.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Goal setting and accountability, I think, is core tenets of Sidebar. Okay, with the last couple of minutes, I want to turn it over to Lisa. So Lisa, what's the next step? So if folks are interested, you know, do they contact you or? 'Cause
Yeah.
I know Sidebar has purchased memberships for a number of this for your portfolio. And so what's the
Yeah.
next process?
Yeah, and first, let me thank you, Lexi, Sam, and Magna, of course, for giving us an hour of your time today to help us really understand what Sidebar is and how folks might benefit from participating. So, like Ha mentioned, Sparrow has purchased 5 memberships to Sidebar. We're piloting this program that are available for our founder community and also members of your leadership team. So it doesn't necessarily have to be you. It could be somebody on your team that you think would benefit from participating in this. What we're asking is that you fill out a very, very short nomination form, either for yourself or for your team member, that says who they are, why you think they might benefit, literally just a couple bullet points. You don't need to spend a lot of time on this. And then send that over to our team by the end of next week. We'll then meet together, pick our first 5 participants, and then stay checked in with them throughout the process. This is a pilot. We could certainly expand it in the future, but we're really excited about the potential here for this kind of cohort-based leadership programming. If you do have any questions about the nominations, the program, anything else, I am always available to you over Slack or any other medium that is easier for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me to get any questions answered.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, okay, this has been an amazing session. I really loved spending time with Meghna and Sam and Lexi and all of you. And it's so good to see some faces that I know already. So, and if you have any questions that didn't get answered, just reach out to me anytime. Lisa will share my contact information. It's always fun to connect with Spiro Portfolio anyway. So even if you don't want to talk about Sidebar, you want to talk about anything else, I'm always happy to chat. So, so thank you all for spending the time. We'll send out the recording and share with your teams as well. And even if we can't get you into the pilot, if you want to talk to me separately about maybe getting a couple of members of your teams in, like right now, you know, we can make that happen. So have an amazing Friday and weekend, and we will see you soon.
All right. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Have an amazing day.
Bye.